Our guest for this hour is already seated. Mheshimiwa Daniel Nanok. He is the MP for Turkana West and he's with us this morning. Mheshimiwa, good morning.
Good morning, Andu.
How are you doing?
Doing great.
Karibu sana.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. It's good to have you again in the hot seat, coming in and having conversations about things that are important. And as you do that, CT's been away, but he brings back a bag of goodies. And he's come back on the day that you have been to. And we welcome you with today's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. We had proverbs from the country of Niger a couple of months ago. But as I said, this turmoil that seems to be resident in West Africa has gotten me thinking. And it's given a new perspective to the proverbs that come from that particular region. And so I decided that instead of just going by the pattern that I'd followed before, that I stay in West Africa for the next 2 or 3 weeks, just to look at their proverbs and perhaps discuss the thinking behind some of the proverbs that they have. But remember, the Republic of Niger has one thing that the rest of the world doesn't have. One, it has more uranium deposits than anybody else on the planet. So remember the earlier conversation about the interest people have?
Right.
Right there. One doesn't need to go too far. Right there. That is the interest. And I dare say the rest of this continent also has natural resources that are incomparable to probably every other part of this globe. Now for the proverb. Only a medicine man gets rich by sleeping.
Mheshimiwa, you're not asleep.
I'm not.
And he's not a medicine man.
You're not a medicine man.
I can't get rich.
Okay. So it's the process of elimination here. What do you think about that proverb?
And you know, proverbs are meant to put people to think. There are very few words describing the whole world. So, only a medicine man gets, rich by sleeping.
Only a medicine man gets rich by sleeping.
By sleeping.
Yes.
Medicine men are meant to deal with sickness of people.
Yeah.
Everything.
And
Everything.
Okay, and let's say sickness is all those and abnormal, situations that people get into,
Yes.
whichever way they do. And so, the medicine men don't look for patients. It's patients who look for them. And everybody then who becomes a patient, which is automatic, once in a while you will be, all of us do, get sick. We will go looking for those people. Whether they are quacks, whether they are the real medicine, the trained ones, whichever. Could that be the sleeping bit that they get? I mean, you go to them, and so for the services they will offer you, they will charge you. At their place, at their cost,
comfort,
yes, at their comfort zone, and so I want to believe that is the sleeping aspect. So money gets to them, not that they go out looking for that money.
No?
You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, Mheshimiwa, you have 10, because when we ask for your perspective on the proverb, that is your perspective.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone else would have told us something different. But it's true. You're a medicine man. Whether you're awake or asleep, you're a medicine man. Yes. And the perspective that you brought, which I like, people will come looking for you. People queue to see medicine men.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is it.
Yes.
All right. So, Mheshimiwa, as we get into it this morning, looking at the state of refugees in Kenya, and you are a member of parliament for Turkana West. And Turkana West is the constituency that houses, or rather, the largest refugee camp in Kenya being Kakuma.
Yeah.
And we've seen some movement out of Kakuma in the last couple of months. We've seen some movement in terms of people coming to visit. There have been certain things happening. Ukraine, grain from Ukraine coming to Turkana. We've seen many things going on here. But still, we have heard over the last couple of years that, wanted to close down the camp. People have known the camp for their whole lives. There have been children who've been born there and have lived their whole life in those camps and have come out of those camps maybe later. Some who've not left. Let's get a status update of what is going on for refugees coming out of Kakuma today. What do things look like at the moment?
Thank you, Ndu. Yes, it is true that we host the largest refugee camp as the people of Turkana West constituency. And that has been for quite some time. The first refugees into Kakuma came in 92 from South Sudan, particularly. Since then, others have joined in from Ethiopia. And I mean, the second largest, I think, group come from Ethiopia. And then many other small refugee groups or numbers from various countries. I happened to attend the World Refugee Day, which was celebrated on the 19th of July in Kakuma. In attendance of that day was the PS, Migration and Citizen Affairs, Professor Bitok, as the chief guest. But also in attendance was the High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi, and the country rep, UNHCR, which is the organization or UN organization that deals with refugees. And it was mentioned then that there are 22 nationalities in Kakuma. There are actually two camps. One is a camp, the other one is a settlement. I'm still grappling with the difference between a settlement and a camp. But Kalobeye settlement and Kakuma refugee camp. So those two refugee areas occupying about 40 square kilometers of our land. 40 square kilometers of the land. 15 square kilometers in Kalobeye, and about 25 in Kakuma town. It seems like, okay, there are those who come because of problems, but there are those people who come in and they look okay. I've seen people in that camp who, by all purposes, don't pass. In my understanding, don't pass for refugees, because my understanding of a refugee is someone on the run, someone whose life is under threat, maybe
seeking asylum for one reason or other reason.
One reason or the other, and so there are people who want to come and stay there. After some time, they go out, they come back. So in Kakuma, the camp has been reducing and as well as increasing. There was a time, 09, 010, when we thought that now the camp was going to close because, the settlements were being demolished because the numbers were reducing. I think that is just about after the independence of South Sudan.
Yes.
But now again, it's swelling up. So it's been increasing and reducing in that manner, in that aspect.
Okay.
So as it is now, there are very many refugees. The last conversation I had with the representative in her office, they are bursting. Now the camps are bursting. They are in need of more area. They need more support. And with the occurrences around the world, around the globe, on issues of wars, insecurity, the challenges of the life that we are facing now, funding is becoming a challenge. Also, I got to hear from the representative. And so there are newer areas. The war in Ukraine definitely is a big one, and it is taking out refugees. The other time we were seeing Myanmar, and all those new areas where refugees are actually running out of their countries. Interest is changing, and funding is also redirected to those new areas.
Right.
So Kakuma is suffering from underfunding in a way, and there is a lot of downsizing and reprogramming of whatever used to be there. And so what is happening in Kakuma is good and bad to the refugees. There are issues of insecurity even in the camp now, amongst themselves, disagreements between these communities that are refugees. They come with baggages from whatever place they have come from, those bad feelings and hatred. And some of those things play out in the camp. These are the situations that I see. But overall, I think the government is managing this situation. There is the Department of Refugee Service under the Ministry of Interior and National Government. The ones who are overseeing the camp, and I think they are trying. They are providing the necessary administrative cover.
In 2021, under the leadership of then Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, there were talks that Kakuma would be one of those camps that would be closed and closed completely. What would happen to refugees thereafter really then was not Kenya's issue, but they said, look, we've done it for years, we've done it for decades, and the burden then on Kenya was just too much, and let's see that close. That conversation didn't go beyond a conversation, but it seemed that it was a welcome suggestion and connecting in line with what you're saying now. That there are certain things that happen when you do bring in refugees. That yes, they do come in with the baggage of conflict from their original country. They do then come in also with, a burden on the economic status of their host, which is Kenya, and then the question of repatriation and settlement and their upkeep and all of these other things. In some cases, assimilation into the into the country. Those things come into play, and those are some of the reasons as to why Matiang'i at the time then gave this directive. But it was welcomed by many people. Would that still be the same sentiment today? Because we're looking at upwards of 300,000 refugees that the camp can hold and has held for some time between these two camps, settlement and camp. Huge numbers. 22 nationalities that you speak of.
No, it's whether welcome or not, both ways. It's not Fred Matiang'i. It's not the minister who actually talked of the closure of the camp. It's actually the former president who declared that in a year's time the camps should close. And I want to believe there were good reasons for that pronouncement by the president, and you've mentioned some of them. Actually, hosting refugees is not an easy thing, because this is a population that is extra to the country. It's even more challenging and difficult. Sometimes I ask myself, how comes or what happens that the marginalized areas of this country are the ones that are made, or the one that Kenya has chosen to host the refugees.
Because they border other countries. And
that aspect of bordering.
Yes.
Is it because of our non-productivity nature? Is it because we are the fringes of, even the refugee situation in itself, it's a difficult situation. So there are refugees in Turkana, and there are refugees in northeastern Dadaab, and those Wajir constituencies and sub-counties. When the president announced that there will be closure of the camps, the refugee camps, for whatever reasons, I was called by my constituents.
Yes.
And they asked me to tell the president that they are okay with the refugees. Yeah. That he should not close the camps. Why? Because in the thinking and the take of my constituents, and a good number of, people even in Turkana, there are benefits that come with the hosting of the refugees. And yes, it is true.
What are these benefits, Mheshimiwa?
Side benefits, development, particularly employment opportunities, business opportunities arise because of that population. The population, the 200, 300,000 that you mentioned, need services. They need goods and services. And those goods and services are provided by this country and the residents and the people around. The jobs, that come with the presence of the refugees in the country are jobs that can be accessed by the population that hosts them. There is a lot of interaction of the refugees and the host community. In fact, that interaction has led to kind of a creation of a new community, marriages between refugees and the host community.
Right.
So
essentially you're talking about integration.
If that is what integration would be, Muga, it is happening in around these camps. And so, because of those benefits, there are those who say, no, don't close the camps.
Right.
But I want to believe that the government had a reason, and a good reason, at the closure of the camps, because there are many other side effects of those camps. In my constituency, one of the greatest damages that the presence of the refugees has caused is the environmental degradation. Cutting down of the little vegetation cover, the shrubs and the trees.
To build the camp.
In order to build, in order to cook, use of those natural resources. The water in River Taraj, which would have been water for use by the community, is actually being used more by the refugees. If you are to visit Kakuma camp and see the number of water tanks erected to provide water to the camps, there are 10 times the number of tanks you will see serving the host community. Those differences, very glaring. Okay. In terms of education, it brings a sense of better performance or better access of education educational opportunities, of business opportunities. Even the refugees do business. And they do quite a lot of business.
Yeah.
Some of the richest people in my constituency are those refugees.
And they're counted as members of your constituency, are they not?
No, they are not.
No, they're not.
They are a separate constituency completely. Of course, they don't partake of the political processes
or the services.
The services, they are provided those services by UNHCR and government.
Yes.
And so they are treated as another.
They're treated as guests.
Yes. We would say that. But those other interactions, social interactions, economic interactions between the host and the refugees, that is a daily occurrence, which has actually helped the constituency. And Kakuma town at that. Kakuma town has actually grown because of the presence of the refugees. It is like when Operation Lifeline Sudan used to be in Lokichogyo. And Lokichogyo was then the booming town in Turkana County, and even the country at that time in the 90s. The place to go in Turkana was Lokichogyo.
Yes.
Now the place to go in Turkana is Kakuma, and of course Lodwar as the seat of Turkana County government and devolution.
There's a thing of honor about hosting those who may have been in a difficult situation around the world. That those countries who have then had a policy to then accept those who seek asylum or those who are leaving their countries because of conflict, because of war. There are treaties that have been signed by nations to be then accepting of these individuals or these communities or these societies who leave en masse because of conflicts like this.
Yeah.
Should Kenya still see it as a thing of honor? Should Kenya still see it as an agreement that had been made by signing of particular treaties and protocols to continue with this, regardless of the sentiment that may come from the ground?
Kenya is a respected country in the League of Nations, in the globe, in the world. And what Kenya does is, of course, we can't run away from the rest of the world. And by us signing those treaties, we are actually confirming of our place in the League of Nations, in the world, that we will want to be part of what happens in our globe. And so those treaties are actually the ones that have helped Kenya do what they are doing with the refugees, for example, and many other things. We know that the UNEP headquarters is in Kenya. So Kenya is a respected country in the UN, in the world. As to whether they should continue, I think it's not about, it's not a matter of whether, because the reason why Kenya signed into those treaties was to be part of the solution to the world problems. And this refugee problem is very current. It is actually growing in the world. And so if we were to say we sign out of these treaties, what message shall we be sending to the world?
Absolutely.
And so signing the treaty is okay for Kenya as part of the world, as part of, as one of the countries of the world, as a country that respects human rights and wanting people to live well and live in peace. The challenges that come with that, of course, it's about mitigating them. It's about working to solve those challenges between Kenya and the UN and those organizations that are particularly targeting or exist to serve this particular constituency. I think there will be a solution to whatever challenges that refugees come with. And so Kenya is still a signatory to the UN conventions and the world. The refugees are part of these agreements that we've signed, that we can host them.
Yeah.
And I think we are managing. The country is managing. Challenges notwithstanding, I think the treaties are serving the world.
For someone to be a refugee, they must be declared as such. Meaning it's like a criteria, it's like an exam. If you meet that criteria. Now, when you mentioned that there are people you find in the camps who don't strike you as being refugees, is it possible for someone to actually get into that camp if UNHCR has not declared you a refugee?
Mugayo, I imagine you are seeing the camp as a controlled space.
Ish.
The one I have seen in Kakuma and even Kalobeye is an open space.
Anybody can walk in and out.
Anybody can walk in and walk out.
Yeah.
But you are right that there is a process to declare someone a refugee. Yeah. There is in fact, that process now is being undertaken by the officers of the Department of Refugee Services. And the process, they are officers employed to vet anybody who comes to a particular place. There is what is called a reception center. So there is a reception center, and that should be the first call. I mean, the first point of call when you come in, seeking that status. But there are guys who do not go through that particular point.
Where do they go?
That reception point. They either know someone in the camp, they have a relative in the camp, and they know where the relative is, so they will just come in and join up. Those are and yes, it's not controlled. This is what I can say. But most of the numbers that we talk of course, there are those that go through that refugee status determination process.
Are there benefits that somebody has when you have been declared a refugee?
Oh yes.
Meaning of the status?
Oh yes. There are benefits.
So it is a status that some people
there are guys who have been declared to be refugees. They went through the process, and when their country's situation improved, they went back. But they have not denounced their status as refugees.
Which is one of the requirements.
Yeah. So you would find someone is living in Kitale and they benefit from the camp in Kakuma.
How?
It happens. How, I don't know. But
so,
I've said, these people don't disengage. They already registered themselves and they're refugees.
You know, I am so sorry if I cut you short. What does that then say about accountability structures, security structures that we need to have in place as a country? Because I hear you're talking about the porosity of the camps and the way it's not a controlled environment. But aren't there measures that have been put to make sure that there is a certain structure and a certain way of how things operate? And as you answer that one, this is a burning question also. I heard you while I was seated in the other room, and you talked of underfunding. I am meant to understand that the UNHCR gives us a budget of about 10 million in US dollars per annum. That amounts to around 1.2 billion in Kenyan shillings. Is it underfunding or is it mismanagement of funds? And I would really like for you to talk about the accountability part of it, because you're a member of parliament. Oversight is part of your job. Thank you.
Well, Lucia has joined in the fireworks.
Yes.
She has done.
Yeah, I am an active citizen, and I'm sure the people of Turkana West who employed you would love to hear from you also.
Of course they do.
Let's get those up.
Of course they do. Which one do I start with? The one of
porosity of the camp. So let's
okay.
start with that one.
As I've told you, the camp is an open space. You know, when you have a controlled place, it means you will have a fence, it means you have gates, it means you have security, stationed.
You have identification.
Of course. And some of those things are done. Like the refugees have an identification document.
They do.
They are provided. But only those who have gone through the process. Okay? Only those who have landed at the reception center and they have been processed and they have been counted as refugees. In a case where these walk-ins happen, the one I was saying, that person would not be counted. That person most likely may not have the registration documents. Lucia talks of accountability or in terms of how these people live in the camp.
The management.
And that management. The management this is a community. And community is not even a community of 22 nationalities. Even within those 22 nationalities, there are still intra-communities. So you have to devise a way of managing them, administering them, and dealing with them. Now, the responsibility, as I know, of managing that camp is given to the Kenyan government through the Department of Refugee Services.
Right.
It's the one that runs the determination process. It is the one that issues the documents, the refugee documents, and they provide permission or documents for these refugees to travel in and out. That is for those who have been identified and registered. For those that I alluded to as maybe walk-ins, that process may not be correct for them. I may not work, will not be there for them, or will not work for them because they are not known, they are not registered.
I think the question, I think the question then on that would be then, how is it that we can then have just walk-ins into a refugee camp that is meant to care for folks who are coming from a situation, supposedly, who are coming from a situation of conflict, who are seeking asylum for some other reason, but we are saying that you could just walk in and be given facilities.
Like there's a process, but you can bypass it.
What is that? Maybe we will be digressing. That is not a major number of refugees.
Okay.
It may just be about 20 people or 10 people.
Compared to those who are actually
you're
registered.
talking of 200, 300 people. So 300,000.
Yes.
So maybe if you dig so much into that, we will be digressing from the actual discussion, talking about those walk-ins. Yeah. But in terms of the what was your second question?
The funding. Is it underfunding or mismanagement?
I can't talk for UNHCR, but this is something I got to hear while discussing with her, that they are receiving less funding now because of the situation around the world where interest is going elsewhere. And so what they used to get as UNHCR in order to support the refugees in Kakuma and Dadaab is less than what they have now.
Yeah.
And the needs.
True.
And the numbers are still as high as they were. So the needs are increasing.
So you're saying that what we have is a situation where the number of refugees in our camps are increasing and the funding
is decreasing.
Yes. And it is a global issue. It's a global effect.
Right.
Why? Because of the wars and what have you that are increasing, and so there are many more refugees and refugee hot points in the world. Those new ones are taking.
What has always puzzled me is when you have refugees, is it by law? Is it legislation that mandates them to always be recipients of assistance, or is there an opportunity for refugees to engage in something gainful that can actually earn them money?
Muga, that's a good question. Actually, that conversation is ongoing. Ignited by UNHCR, the organization that the UN organization that deals with these refugee matters. The refugees came into Kakuma. We were told they were coming for a short time. And then when their countries gets peace,
then they would reintegrate.
Then they will be gone back. They can go back. Surprisingly, South Sudan has been independent now for how many years? 13, 12 years. And South Sudanese are the highest refugees in Kakuma camp.
Why do you think that is so much?
They are not going. And there are more now coming because of the war in Sudan.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are more coming in. But even in South Sudan, those who registered as refugees, they are not going out. When they're not going out of the camp, they're not going back to their country. Yeah.
So
there are those from Burundi, for instance. Burundi is a peaceful country, but those refugees registered from Burundi are in the camp, and they're there.
A country may be peaceful, but you may belong to
okay.
But you may belong to a group that unfortunately is targeted or marginalized.
So that is the situation.
Yes.
And so the numbers are like stagnant, if not increasing. And so the needs are increasing. There are those who are born in these camps 30 years down the line.
30?
Yes.
Yeah.
From 92?
Yes, there are those
Just work out
who
your
came into the camps. Because
in
that's the situation.
1992.
That we know that there are folks who came into the camps as children, who came in
and they're now
married,
early adult.
Absolutely. And they got married. The thing is that the truth is, a country hosts a camp as large as Kakuma. You know, the very few as big as that in other parts of the world, Germany, Ethiopia, have such large numbers, right? Okay. However, if you host and there's funding for it, the likelihood of you as a host nation to want to then be involved in what is going on is very low because somebody is footing the bill.
Yeah.
There's no way today that there will be dwindling of those funds and then the Kenya government will suddenly sit up and say, okay, well, let's pick up the slack for whatever is left over. Because no, we'll provide you with the land, we'll provide you with the basic security and amenities, but then for the funding of this thing to keep running, you said we've hosted. Don't expect us to now start to deliver in terms of resources, money. Right? So if the situation around the world, and we've accepted that those who've signed the refugee charter, those who've signed these other human rights charter and say, yes, we can host in one way or another, do we then expect that, what do you expect when wars and rumors of wars are happening around the world and the refugee status, whether you like it or not, percentages will increase. It will increase. Yeah. You can't then expect, and this is you can't then expect that the funding will go up. It will go down. So difficult decisions then need to be made in terms of what is going to happen. You said people are not leaving.
Yeah. That is why I said that UNHCR is leading in that conversation to say we thought it was a passing, a support for a short while. But now it looks like we need permanent solutions. We need sustainable operation for refugees. And that has brought new thinking. It has brought thoughts of developing these camps. How? World Bank is involved in some project that improves livelihoods of refugees. These people, by the way, are now farming. Some of them are involved in farm activities to produce their own food. There is also the question of, do they get food rations or are they given subsidy, fund money to buy so as to improve the business environment within the camp and the host community. Thereby, buying and selling is encouraged.
There was also this conversation of allowing refugees who perhaps had stayed for a certain length of time a new status, one which allows you to actually get into the citizenry.
It has begun, yeah.
Work, meaning, yes, you started off as a refugee, but you then now have a legal right to actually seek employment, get a livelihood. Do you see many people or do you hear, when you spoke to the person in charge of refugees in the country, do you hear of this program working well?
I haven't heard of it actually. That of employment, seeking employment like the rest of us.
Yes. It's there.
In fact, Muga, the rest of us don't have jobs.
Yes.
The rate of unemployment in this country is bad. Now, are you seeing the kind of competition that will come in?
200,000 people, not too much competition.
In my constituency, it's not funny when a refugee gets something to do ahead of the host community member. It's not interesting. So you may have, if you have a special skill, if you have like for instance a doctor, and you decide to open your own clinic as a refugee, of course that is business, and that is selling your skill. That you don't. I mean, that is facilitated. That is possible. The way a shop owner, has. I mean, a refugee starts a business, a shop business.
Yes,
that is allowed, and it is running, and the government documents are provided at the county level, at the national level,
for that to take place.
For that to happen.
As a citizen of this country, it's already very challenging for me to register a business, leave alone even starting it, because where am I getting the capital from, first of all? So I'm imagining how much more harder it's going to be for a refugee to start a business in this country, because, those challenges. But then I would also like to point out, because I have interacted with a few organizations that deal with refugees. I watched a documentary film that was done, I think, about 2 months ago. And one of the things that keep popping up with the challenges that the refugees are facing is also police harassment, similar to the same way when you walk around town and you're a young person and you have dreadlocks, especially for the men, and you're like around the age of 24 to 35, the police will harass you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just walking from point A to point B, and you're asked for your ID. There's all these things.
They will tell you it's prevention.
Yeah, and then they tell you, oh, you've committed, or they arrest you and they tell you you're loitering. I'm going home from work. How is that loitering? So it's the same challenge that the refugees are facing. So when we sit here and we say maybe if they start a business or this or that, isn't that reaching? Because it's already super difficult for us who are locals to start those businesses.
Lucia, you are talking maybe from watching that documentary and hearing what he said.
Yeah,
I live in this town,
yes,
which hosts refugees. I actually visit the camp. Sometimes I go buy my merchandise
from the camp.
From the camp. They own businesses. How they get the money, I can't tell you. Some of them have very good money.
But they're refugees.
You know what? And they're refugees. There is money transfers coming from outside.
Wherever it comes from,
From the world.
Yeah.
From Canada. From US. US dollars. And they get to that camp. By the way, if you go to Kakuma camp, you will get all manner of businesses. Businesses that you run in this Nairobi are in Nairobi, are in Kakuma,
and running
in Kakuma camp. Run by who? By the refugees. Some of these refugees, by the way, let's appreciate one thing. The refugees that come in are not just average people. Some of them are highly educated. Some of them ran from their country with big positions, portfolios. So they have the means and they have the wherewithal. It's just that they, for one reason or the other, could not be where they come from. But it's not everybody. Of course, and maybe when I say that, that's how many people are normally rich in our society. Maybe 5% out of a whole 95 are the rest. So even in this camp case, that is what obtains. There are those who are doing well, but there are those who are completely dependent on the support of the UNHCR, the food, the shelter.
It's an important conversation to have. Time does run out. Mheshimiwa, thank you for being with us here this morning. And I think one that can be had again in the future.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.